If you think human history is merely stories of power, wars, and kings, then prepare yourself. Because right in the midst of Europe's ancient, beautiful cities, there once existed dark chambers where simply being a woman was enough to bring you here. Inside, devices specifically designed to crush women's bodies and dignity operated without mercy. Iron bridles silenced their voices, ducking stools drowned their hopes. Pairs of anguish expanded and tore from within, and burning iron claws ripped apart their soft flesh. Everything you're about to hear is historical fact, backed by archaeological records, historical documents, and forensic studies. No exaggeration, no embellishment. If you believe that no one deserves to endure such horrors simply for being a woman, leave a comment. No one deserves to suffer like this. Silencing the voice. The Scold's Bridle. In European societies of the 16th to 18th centuries, women were expected to submit completely to men, to their husbands, fathers, and the male authorities of the community. Simply being too outspoken, arguing with husbands, or discussing matters beyond women's place could lead to accusations of scolding, literally, being too talkative. To control such women, authorities used the Scold's Bridle. It was a heavy iron mask weighing between 1.5 to 2.5 kilograms that encased the entire head and face. The most important feature was the iron plate that extended into the woman's mouth, often fitted with sharp edges or spikes pointing upwards toward the tongue. Any movement of the tongue, swallowing, speaking, even breathing, would cause these sharp edges to tear into the soft tissue, creating constant bleeding. The women were paraded through marketplaces, subjected to jeers, rotten food thrown at them, and public humiliation. This was not interrogation. It was public punishment and humiliation, meant to serve as a warning to all other women. Many victims developed severe mouth infections, abscesses, septicemia, and some ultimately died from blood poisoning. Historical records at Beamish Museum in County Durham, England, document several cases of fatal infections following this punishment. Drown or die. The ducking stool. If society feared women's voices, it feared witches even more, and those accused of witchcraft were overwhelmingly women. The ducking stool became a widespread method of both trial and punishment during the infamous witch hunts from the 15th to the 18th centuries, spanning from England, Scotland, all the way to Salem, America. The device consisted of a sturdy wooden chair fixed to a long wooden arm that extended over a river or lake. The victim's hands and feet were tightly bound to the chair. The wooden arm slowly lowered the woman into the cold water. As icy water flooded the mouth, nose, and lungs, panic surged. Oxygen deprivation struck within seconds. Bound and unable to struggle, most women quickly lost consciousness from asphyxiation. They were repeatedly dunked, lifted, and submerged again and again until guilt or innocence was determined. If they drowned, they were declared innocent. If they floated, it was considered proof of witchcraft. Although legally, this punishment could apply to men, in practice, over 90% of ducking stool victims were women, as shown in the Pendle witch trials, Lancashire 1612, and Salem witch trials, Massachusetts 1692. Destroying the body, the pair of anguish. Among all torture devices allegedly aimed at women's bodies, the pair of anguish remains one of the most debated and disturbing. According to historical accounts and popular belief, this steel device was shaped like a pear, with metal leaves that expanded outward when twisted by a screw. It was said to be used for crimes specifically tied to women: abortion, adultery, prostitution, lesbianism, and blasphemy. Depending on the accusation, the device was reportedly inserted into the mouth, vagina, or rectum, with vaginal insertions most often linked to female offenders. Once inserted, The screw would slowly spread the metal leaves apart, tearing soft internal tissues, rupturing pelvic muscles, bursting blood vessels, and causing massive internal bleeding. Victims were believed to suffer extreme pain, often falling into shock, cardiac arrest, or dying days later from sepsis and internal injuries. However, many modern historians and forensic experts question whether the pair of anguish was ever actually used as a torture device. Some suggest it may have been a symbolic tool, a later fabrication, or created for display, rather than real use. Surviving examples exist today, including specimens at Rothenburg's Medieval Crime Museum in Germany. But direct historical evidence of its active use in torture chambers remains scarce and controversial. Erasing femininity, the breast ripper. When a woman's so-called honor was at stake, accused of adultery, defying religious purity, or violating family dignity, they were subjected to a device that targeted their very symbol of femininity, the breast. The breast ripper was a steel claw-like tool with 4 sharp hooks curved inward like meat hooks. The iron was first heated red-hot over burning coals. Once clamped onto the breast, the intense heat instantly burned the skin while the hooks pierced deeply into the flesh. With a single violent pull, entire portions of breast tissue were torn off, blood vessels rupturing as flesh was ripped apart. Victims either died immediately from massive blood loss or succumbed days later from deep infections. The breast ripper was designed exclusively for women. Both the crime and the punishment centered around female identity. Public shame. The shrew's fiddle. Unlike many gruesome torture devices designed to physically destroy the body, the shrew's fiddle, also known as the neck violin or double violin, was a tool of public humiliation, specifically targeting women's behavior and their place in society. Emerging in Central Europe around the 16th and 17th centuries, particularly in German-speaking regions, this wooden contraption was primarily used to punish women who were labeled as quarrelsome, argumentative, or insubordinate, what society then called shrews. The device was a flat wooden board with 2 or more holes, one for the neck and 1 or 2 for the wrists, locking the woman's head and hands together in a fixed, humiliating position directly in front of her chest. The most basic versions immobilized one person, but some variants chained 2 women face to face, forcing them to reconcile disputes while locked together in public view. This version was sometimes called the double shrew's fiddle. Unlike more violent torture tools, the purpose here was not to physically injure, but to shame. The immobilized woman was paraded through town squares, or left standing in public spaces for hours, exposed to ridicule, insults, thrown objects, and verbal abuse from onlookers. Though direct pain was limited, prolonged immobilization often led to swollen joints, severe shoulder pain, numbness in the arms, skin abrasions on the neck and wrists, and psychological trauma from public humiliation. In longer sentences, nerve damage and permanent joint stiffness could occur. While a few documented cases involved men, the vast majority of recorded victims were women, reflecting the gendered expectation that women remain silent, submissive, and obedient. Original examples of shrew's fiddles survive today in museums like the Mittelalterliches Folter Museum in Austria, offering a stark reminder of how public shaming was systematically weaponized against women's voices. Back then, these punishments weren't really about guilt or innocence. Many of these women didn't break laws. They simply didn't fit what others expected. They spoke up. They made choices. Or sometimes they just lived differently. What happened to them is history now. But the idea behind it, judging someone for who they are, still exists in many forms. If you believe no one should ever suffer for simply being themselves, leave a comment. No one deserves to suffer like this. That's why these stories still matter.